It is well known that most rappers come from difficult backgrounds, getting involved with gangs, and it is tough for them to leave that life behind. Countless stars have been injured and have died as a result of gang-related violence, with them always being a target for ops. This stuff is usually first reported in the news, but some rappers actually had a shooting go down on IG Live. That meant fans and viewers could see things go down in real time. Kodak Black. We're going to open with Kodak Black, who is arguably one of the bigger stars on this list. Back in February 2022, the rapper was attending a post-concert after party at the Nice Guy Restaurant and Lounge in Los Angeles. The party was leading up to the Super Bowl, which was probably why the rapper was in attendance in the first place. At around 2:45 in the morning, Black could be seen standing out on the street with a couple of other artists. Everything seemed to be just fine, but then suddenly, a fight broke out. The rapper could be seen taking a swing at someone before gunshots went off. It was claimed that the rapper was jumping to the defense of someone in his crew when a stranger had stepped up to them. According to reports, 10 shots were fired in total, with footage also capturing a man in a black hoodie clearly holding a pistol in his hand. As soon as the shots were fired, the entire street erupted in chaos as people ran in all directions in the hopes of getting to safety. The rapper was one of 3 men shot in the attack, taking a bullet to the leg. Thankfully, the injury posed no threat to his life, and he was stable after being rushed to the hospital. On the Monday after the shooting, Black's lawyer released a statement regarding his client's status. It read, "There was an unprovoked attack on an individual Kodak was with. When security and Kodak came to his aid, several shots were fired at them. He will make a full recovery and he is in stable condition." The reason behind the attack was unclear, but notorious music manager Wack 100 had an interesting take on events. During a conversation on Clubhouse, Wack claimed that Black had been shot because of comments he had made about a woman named Lauren London who shared a child with the late Nipsey Hussle. He said on some clout chasing talking about, "What's that you said about Lauren London? Get the out of here." But Kodak got off. This claim didn't make a lot of sense for a couple of reasons, mainly because the attacker had first stepped up to someone else in the rapper's crew and not the rapper himself. In an interview, Black stated that he had listened to the Clubhouse conversation and that whatever Wax said was basically nonsense. Another reason Wax claims don't make sense is that there are a fair amount of rumors that suggest Black is associated with the Zoe Mafia family, also known as ZMF. Among the ZMF's notable allies are the Crips. Nipsey Hussle was allegedly associated with the Crips, and if there was any beef between allied members, odds are that it would not have led to a public shootout, especially with other notable celebrities in the vicinity. A few days after the shooting, Kodak Black showed off his injury on Instagram Live, where his leg could be seen wrapped in a bandage and supported by a knee brace. The rapper didn't seem fazed at all by the shooting, saying, "I done stood up in shootouts. I done stood up in multiple shootouts and ain't never get scratched. Just got a little scratch." Honeycomb Brazy. Honeycomb Brazy is probably not a name that many fans immediately recognize, but like a lot of other rappers, he has had multiple problems with gang-related activity and law enforcement. A member of the Alabama Bloods, he has never shied away from his association with the gang, often making references to them in his music and on social media. The rapper has been arrested on multiple occasions, with charges ranging from robbery all the way to murder. While it is unclear just who his ops exactly are, there is no denying that he has made a number of enemies over the years. I want to take a second and give a little context to what was going on with Brazy leading up to the shooting. Back in 2016, he had been handed a 15-year prison sentence for possession of a firearm, but that wasn't the only charge, as prosecutors had allegedly shown footage of Brazy around tons of guns and drugs. Luckily for him, the rapper, whose real name is Nashon Jones, only spent about 18 months behind bars before getting out on probation in November 2020. Just a couple of days later, he went live on his Instagram handle, clearly still in a very good mood after his release from prison. But those good vibes would not last for very long, as someone would let off multiple shots in his direction. Luckily, he was inside a car and was able to duck to safety, and everyone who was watching his Instagram Live saw the shooting happen as it went down. The entire situation was pretty intense, with a witness saying that they heard a bunch of shots and praying, "Lord have mercy, don't tell me they were up in there because, Lord, I heard the children coming across the field crying." This was far from the only time Brazy had a near-death experience. According to the man himself, he was once shot 8 times after getting out of prison and was even in a coma for a little while. The most shocking incident didn't even directly involve him, though. Just a few months after surviving the shooting in November 2020, ops would begin targeting his family. In February 2021, the rapper's grandparents would die in a fire after their house burned down. Law enforcement stated that the deaths were being investigated as homicides, with the victims allegedly being shot dead before the fire. Even Brazy said that rival gang members had targeted family. That wasn't all, as there was allegedly a shooting at Brazy's mother's house in June 2021 as well. Luckily, she had not been home at the time, but the rapper's mother also said that this wasn't the first time she had been shot at since the fire. Though luckily for Brazy and his mother, 4 people, including a drug kingpin, were arrested in February 2022 in connection with the fire used to cover up the murder of his grandparents. All of these incidents so close to each other suggest that the rapper may be a marked man, with ops going to great lengths to get at him. Fans got just a taste of what his rivals are capable of in that Instagram Live. Spider D. Social media as a whole has been great for rappers. It has given them an opportunity to interact with their fans on a regular basis and give them insight into the lives their favorite artists lead. Things like Instagram Live actually let the artists do just that in real time, but it is a double-edged sword. As I have mentioned earlier, most rappers have ops and rival gangs always lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. And as great as live streams may be, they also often reveal the artist's location, leaving them vulnerable. That was something Spider D found out the hard way. In May 2021, the rapper went live on Instagram to let his fans know that he was going to drop a new single on the upcoming Friday. After that, he started bragging a little, saying that he did not need to wear a bulletproof vest on these Chicago roads because he's good in these streets. Saying that was almost like tempting fate because before the live ended, gunshots were fired at the rapper and his crew. Taking the timing of everything into account, it is very possible that Spider's ops were also watching his live, and when he seemed to be getting a little too confident for his own good, they made a quick decision to knock him down a peg or two. Luck was on the rapper's side that day though. When things started to go down, he and his friends were able to run for cover before anyone got hit, and somehow they got out of the situation without so much as a scratch on them. But it wasn't like Spider had been caught slipping. In the video, the rapper and his crew appeared to pull out pieces of their own to defend themselves from this sudden attack. Something like this, a shooting in broad daylight, wasn't out of the ordinary. Chicago was in the middle of one of the worst crime sprees in recorded history around the time this shooting happened. According to a report from the Chicago Police Department, the number of homicides had reduced when compared to the same month from the previous year, but shooting victims had gone up to 299 from 225 over the same time frame. Keeping that in mind, Spider should have considered himself lucky because he could have very well just ended up being part of a statistic and nothing more. Duke Deuce. Just like Spider D before him, Duke Deuce got into a lot of trouble when he decided to diss his ops on Instagram Live. In September 2021, the rapper chose to take a moment and prove to everyone watching that he wasn't scared of anything. That did not end up working out too well for him. In the live stream, the rapper decided to diss his ops, saying, "Come outside and with me, Pepper Tree. We ain't on none of that bougie none of that Hollywood At the moment, it was unclear just who Deuce was dissing, but most people agreed that he was taking a shot at Pepper Tree Apartments in Memphis, which had been the site of several shootings over the course of the summer. Soon after he said that, gunshots went off in the background, and Deuce took off running as fast as he could, with everything being shown in his live stream. It was unclear if the shots were actually being fired at the rapper himself, or if something else was going on at the apartment complex. Regardless, that little encounter was proof that Pepper Tree was really dangerous, and anything could happen at any time. As a matter of fact, just about a month before Deuce ran into trouble there, a rapper named YNC Capo was murdered late at night on August 14th, 2021. There wasn't too much substantial information, but it was reported that the rapper, who was a part of Chief Keef's Glow Gang, was murdered during a carjacking. So Pepper Tree's notorious reputation was more than justified. Luckily for Deuce, though, his fate would not be as bleak as Capo's. After the rapper was seen running for cover when he heard the gunshots on September 13th, 2021, it wasn't immediately clear if he had been injured or if he was safe. It turned out that he was okay, but he probably chose to steer clear of Peppermint Apartments for a little while after that. If he was actually the target of the shooting, then odds are that his ops knew where he was because of him going live. Doing that in potentially dangerous territory is the rough equivalent of putting a target on your back and walking into a gun range. It's just asking for trouble. Indian Red Boy. On July 8, 2021, the Hawthorne Police Department responded to a shooting call in a gated apartment complex. When they arrived at the scene, they found a 21-year-old male slumped in the front seat of a vehicle parked in the carport to the rear of the building. Officials also said he appeared to be suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Los Angeles County Fire Rescue responded to the location where the male was pronounced deceased. The victim was a man named Zerael Dijon Rivera, a Los Angeles rapper better known by his stage name Indian Red Boy. Early reports suggested suggested that his death was a result of gang-related activity. Red Boy was a member of the Bloods and had been involved in a fair amount of controversy for dissing and vandalizing a mural of deceased rapper Nipsey Hussle, who, if you remember from earlier, had been closely associated with the Crips. Anyone who attended Gang History 101 knows that the Bloods and Crips have been at each other's throats for decades. Moments before his death, Red Boy had been talking with an artist and social media influencer named Baby Capone on Instagram Live. The rapper was ambushed by an unseen assailant who opened fire, letting off at least 12 shots that were heard in the Instagram live stream. Before dropping the phone, Red Boy could be seen mouthing the word help and whispering, "I'm in Hawthorne." It was nothing short of shocking. Capone on the other end of the stream could not believe what was happening and could be heard saying, "What the f***, bro, what the f***? Where you at?" While it was easy to assume that Red Boy had been murdered by the Crips, an unidentified man hopped online and said that had nothing to do with it. This person alleged that Red Boy and one of his friends had been sleeping with the same woman, and when things went sideways, the rapper stopped repping the Hollywood Pirates, a sect of the Bloods, and joined up with an Inglewood crew, which we can assume to be the Inglewood family gangster Bloods. Guess who was a member of the Inglewood sect? That's right, Baby Capone. As things remain, these claims are not much more than a theory. The Bloods and Crips will always find a reason to beef with each other. But this other narrative of a fight over a woman and leaving one crew behind for another holds just as much weight to it. Unfortunately, like countless cases before and after this one, we might never get a definitive answer to the question, who shot Indian Red Boy? About a year after the shooting, the rapper's aunt gave some insight into how he was when he grew up and stated that the death of his mother changed him. His aunt said, after that, his mother's death, he started writing not as much because he loved the streets. Out there, he found what he was looking for, a family. Unfortunately, it is very likely that his pursuit of finding a family would eventually lead to his death. Bugatti Casino. Like a lot of rappers on this list, Bugatti Casino was just hanging out on Instagram Live, taking a little time out of his day to connect with his fans while chilling in his car. During the stream, a random person stepped up to the rapper's vehicle and told him to move because Casino was parked in front of the stranger's house. It is unclear what exactly happened between both men, but the rapper's camera saw this random person lean and reach into the car, and then the video footage went a little fuzzy, presumably because Casino dropped the phone to defend himself from his attacker. While it was difficult to see for those who had joined the rapper's live stream, gunshots were clearly heard, so the entire situation had obviously escalated really quickly. Thankfully though, no one seemed to get injured during the scuffle, but the thing is, this whole ordeal felt a little too random, so it wasn't all that surprising for some to question if this was real or not. That question is going to be asked of another rapper as well, but let's stick with Casino for right now. The rapper did not really have a reputation for faking things in the past, though he had been involved in a couple of shady, sometimes weird situations. The last time he had been in the news, it was for a dog napping of all things. Yep, that's right. Bugatti Casino had been involved in a dog napping. About 7 years ago, the wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, Lucky Whitehead, got on Instagram and said that his dog Blitz had been taken and that the thieves were now demanding a ransom. Casino then revealed that he was involved in this whole plot and wanted the NFL player to cough up $20,000 in exchange for the dog. Whitehead would end up reuniting with Blitz, and while he did not pay the ransom, he did give an undisclosed amount to the dog nappers. So at least we got a happy ending. If a person is capable of stealing a popular athlete's beloved pit bull and actually holding the poor dog for ransom, then that person is capable of pretty much anything. And while it was never confirmed, there's a very real possibility that he staged the entire thing for clout. It's not like anyone actually saw the shootout happen, nor were there any fingers pointed at anyone. PSO Emmett. PSO Emmett was just 16 years old at the time of his death. The rapper from Memphis was shot dead on October 23rd back in 2021 while attending the funeral of a friend. The PSO in the rapper's name stood for Presidential Only, which was probably an indicator of gang affiliation. The shooting allegedly went down when his cousin went live on Instagram, and the rapper's death was quite graphic, with his mother stating that her son's brains were scattered on the pavement, and that would be the last image she has of her boy. Emmett's father was understandably in shock and struggled to accept what had happened. After the shooting, he said, "My son was a baby just trying to enjoy himself. Being himself, just a baby, that's it. That's all he was doing, was just enjoying himself." His father was obviously speaking through unspeakable grief, but PSO Emmett was far from a baby of any sort. The rapper's early work had overtly violent themes, rapping about things like robbery, sex, and murder. He was even seen toting guns around, throwing himself into the deep end of the thug life. Emmett's death was emblematic of a much larger problem in Memphis. In 2021, the city recorded 225 murders, and over 10% of the victims were not even 18 years old at the time of their death. A report by the Memphis police revealed that law enforcement had arrested over 3,000 people for the illegal possession of firearms and seized more more than 4,000 guns, but it clearly wasn't enough. At the time of the shooting that claimed the rapper's life, his cousin was also injured and rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Thankfully, Emmett's family got at least a degree of justice, as the police arrested 2 men just a few days later in connection with the murder. The men named Rico Lee and David Antoine Lee were promptly charged with first-degree murder. Reports at the time suggested that the victims knew their assailants. The escalating violence in the city was enough to cause some to consider leaving the area. A witness who saw the shooting said, "One minute, we were watching a beautiful funeral procession with a horse-drawn carriage. When the procession turned onto another street, the back of the parade erupted in gunfire. People were screaming and running. We have to move." Emmett had just started on his journey to becoming a hip-hop artist, with his father stating that his son was dedicated to making it as a rapper and that he viewed the music as an art form. Unfortunately, an act of violence would bring his journey to a premature end, and we will never know what he could have been truly capable of with a mic in his hand. Snap Dogg. Snap Dogg is another artist with a violent background who would be front and center when he was involved in a shootout while live on Instagram. The rapper had gained a lot of notoriety for staging shootings for his videos and showing off with guns on social media. He believed that by showing off big guns and car chases, he was doing things unlike anyone else on Instagram. The rapper even claimed that he was the most viral rapper to come out of Detroit, Michigan in rap history. While that claim may not be entirely true, there is no denying that Snap made quite the impression on fans. He had a habit of going viral on social media, and he did just that back in 2016 when the Detroit police shut down the shooting of a music video for one of his tracks. He could be seen firing a huge prop gun with a camera crew, which caused law enforcement to intervene and put a stop to things. The point is that Snap had a habit of making a big show, often with guns involved, to gain notoriety and give his fans an insight into his gangster life. So when a video of him getting involved in a shootout in December 2018 hit the web, people couldn't really figure out if this was just another act or if it actually happened. During the live stream, the rapper could be seen walking down the street with his crew at night. Suddenly, he began to talk to someone off screen who could clearly be heard saying, "Who this? Who this? This gonna get blue?" he said. "A whole lot of gang. We ain't gonna play with nobody out here." The rapper would then quickly let off a few rounds as the stream ended abruptly. Considering the fact that people were not completely sure if this was real, Snap uploaded a video to clarify what actually happened. In the video, he stated that he does crazy stuff for skits and music videos, but this was different. He went on to say, "Y'all know me, I'm a real street, you feel me? And I'm not stupid to be doing some dumb like that on live. That was for a video." So according to the rapper, the shootout was legit, and fans who had joined the live were able to see at least a bit of it as it happened. Ayo Dev. Ayo Dev was a promising young rapper from Mississippi, making a name for himself before his untimely death. The rapper had gone on live on Instagram when he was shot dead in December 2019. Like all the other cases so far, it was completely shocking, and the fans who had tuned into the live were stunned by what they had just seen. The crazy thing is that Dev was actually in the middle of performing a freestyle for his fans when it happened, making his death so much more shocking. Initially, everything seemed to be absolutely fine, and it just looked like Dev had gone live to connect with his fans and maybe get his name out there some more. But then just like that, he was dead. It is unclear if the rapper had any gang connections, but his death was definitely not a result of gang-related violence. When authorities from Vicksburg, Mississippi had an opportunity to investigate, they suspected that the young artist had actually died by suicide. That is a theory that has been widely accepted by everyone, but there is no concrete evidence that can confirm if he died by suicide, was shot down by ops, or hell, even ambushed by the police. Early reports suggested that the rapper was only shot once and died on the spot, according to people online. In pretty much all the other shootings I've talked about so far, several shots have been let off when ops have been involved. It doesn't make sense for only one shot to have been fired if someone else had pulled the trigger. If you remember from earlier, Indian Red Boy was shot by someone who basically just walked up to him and fired. But even in that case, about a dozen gunshots had been heard on Instagram Live. Any ops taking out a rival would want to really make sure the job is done. Also, there was not anything to suggest that Dev had any issues with law enforcement, so him being ambushed by cops would not have made any sense either. So that is why death by suicide, unfortunately, makes the most amount of sense in this case. Some people on Instagram even immediately suggested that Dev had shot himself. After the entire ordeal, Dev's friends took to his Instagram account, posting the words "lay in peace" while asking people to keep the rapper's family in their prayers. We see so many cases of rappers dying because of gang-related violence, a result of years spent making difficult but problematic life decisions. Death by suicide just feels different, like there was more that could have been done to save a once promising young rapper. Raleigh Bands. Most of the rappers I have spoken about so far ultimately survived the shootings they were involved in. Most of them did not even get hurt. Unfortunately, Florida rapper Raleigh Bands did not have that kind of luck going for him. I have used the term tempting fate earlier, and Bands did the exact same thing on July 22nd, 2022. The rapper was shot dead outside his apartment complex in Tampa. In a cruel twist of fate, this happened just minutes after the rapper shared a strongly worded message against his ops on Instagram. Taking to his Instagram story, the rapper dared anyone who had a problem with him to step up to him, and that they knew where he lived. He said, "A lot of these know where I live at for real. I sleep in peace. If a nigga wants smoke, I'm at my crib in 5 minutes." It was initially reported that the rapper was, ironically enough, shot dead about 5 minutes after he shared this message. Bands was shot once and was rushed to the nearest medical facility, but they weren't able to do anything to save him. The rapper's alleged attackers were seen fleeing the scene in a vehicle, and after taking a look at all the evidence, law enforcement was of the opinion that this was no coincidence or random act of violence. In a report shared by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, it was suggested that the suspects and victim most likely knew each other. After the rapper's death, a number of fans started commenting RIP on a number of his Instagram posts, but not everyone felt as sympathetic. There were several people who believed there was no reason for Bands to explicitly provoke his ops on social media. While his murderers initially escaped, they weren't free for very long. On August 2nd, a man named Darren Day was arrested after U.S. Marshals found him hiding out in Lee County. Reports coming out soon after the arrest stated that social media posts were instrumental in helping law enforcement establish that Day was involved in the murder. Exactly a week later, on August 9th, a man named Demon Speed was arrested and charged with premeditated first-degree murder and possession of a firearm in connection with the murder of Raleigh Bands. Those charges seem to suggest that Speed had been the one to pull the trigger. The rapper had definitely been on the rise in the Tampa rap scene at the time of his death, but one truly terrible decision would directly lead to death. The arrest of both men was at least a degree of justice for the family members Bands left behind. While law enforcement had initially claimed that one or both of the alleged murderers knew the rapper from before, it does not look like that connection was officially revealed. A common thread in almost all of these shootings is that the rappers often invited trouble onto themselves. In some cases, they actively threw shots at their ops, while in others, issues from the past came back to haunt them. This is unfortunately an all too common phenomenon in the rap industry. Its extremely close ties to gang culture and the thug life mean that it will always be driven by an undercurrent of violence. Fans actually managed to get a peek at the thread of that violence through these artists going live on Instagram. And that's our video. If you liked what you just saw, check one of these out too. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.